Have you ever dealt with a power-hungry HOA president? When Brenda disconnected my water pipes over a harmless backyard fountain, she had no idea I was the master plumber who designed the entire neighborhood's water system. Now it's time for her to learn what happens when you mess with the wrong guy. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. I never thought I'd be the guy with an HOA revenge story, but here we are. My name's Mike, and I'm a licensed plumber with 20 years of experience. Last year, I moved into Sunny Pines Estates, a quiet suburban neighborhood with tree-lined streets and perfectly manicured lawns. It seemed like the ideal place to settle down after years of apartment living. What I didn't know was that I'd soon be dealing with Brenda Thompson, the self-appointed queen of the Sunny Pines Homeowners Association. From day one, she had her beady eyes on my property. It all started on a scorching Saturday afternoon. I was installing a small garden fountain in my backyard. Nothing fancy, just a stone feature with recirculating water. I had all the proper equipment and, being a professional plumber, knew exactly what I was doing. The fountain wasn't even visible from the street, but somehow Brenda caught wind of it. I was tightening the last connection when I heard someone clear their throat loudly behind me. I turned around to see a middle-aged woman with a blonde bob and designer sunglasses, arms crossed over her chest. "Excuse me," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "I'm Brenda Thompson, president of the Sunny Pines HOA. What exactly do you think you're doing?" I stood up, wiping my hands on a rag. "Hi there. Mike just moved in last month. I'm installing a small fountain." Brenda's lips pinched together like she tasted something sour. "Did you submit a property modification form? All exterior changes need HOA approval." "Well, no," I admitted. "It's just a small water feature in my backyard. I didn't think." "That's the problem, isn't it? You didn't think." She pulled out her phone and started taking pictures. "This is a clear violation. You'll need to remove it immediately and submit the proper paperwork." I tried reasoning with her. "It's not visible from the street, and it's professionally installed. I'm actually a master plumber." "I don't care if you're the king of plumbers," she interrupted. "Rules are rules. Remove it by Monday or you'll face a fine." With that, she spun on her heel and marched away, leaving me standing there with a wrench in my hand and steam practically coming out of my ears. Not wanting to cause trouble as the new guy, I reluctantly filled out the ridiculous form and submitted it to the HOA committee. 3 weeks later, I received a rejection letter with no explanation. When I called to ask why, the secretary just said, "The committee felt it wasn't in keeping with neighborhood aesthetics." Fine. I dismantled the fountain and stored it in my garage. But this was just the beginning of my problems with Brenda. Over the next few months, I received violation notices for everything imaginable. My grass was half an inch too tall, my garbage can was visible from the street for more than 12 hours, my Christmas lights were excessive, I had a single string around my porch, and my garden hose wasn't properly stored when I was in the middle of watering my plants. Each time I complied, not wanting to rock the boat. But Brenda's harassment only intensified. It seemed personal now, like she'd made it her mission to make my life miserable. The breaking point came 6 months after I moved in. I'd been called away for an emergency job in another state, a flooding situation at a nursing home. I was gone for 3 days, and when I returned home, I discovered my water had been shut off. Confused, I checked my bills, all paid on time. I called the water company, and they said they hadn't disconnected anything. Finally, I went outside to check the main line and discovered something that made my blood boil. Someone had tampered with my water connection at the property line. Not just shut off, but the pipe had been cut and capped. This wasn't the work of the water company, this was deliberate sabotage. And it required plumbing knowledge to do it right. As I was examining the damage, my neighbor Jim walked over. "Hey Mike, rough few days, huh?" "You could say that. Someone cut my water line. Any idea who might have done this?" Jim looked uncomfortable. "Well, I saw Brenda and her husband here yesterday. They had some guy with them, looked like a handyman type. They were messing around with something near your water meter. I thought maybe you'd arranged it since you were out of town." I took a deep breath, trying to control my anger. "Thanks, Jim. I appreciate the info." That evening, I fixed my water line and restored service to my house. Then I sat down at my kitchen table thinking about how to handle this. What Brenda had done wasn't just petty HOA nonsense, it was illegal. She had trespassed on my property and tampered with my utilities. In most places, that's a criminal offense. I could call the police, but I had a better idea. You see, there's something Brenda didn't know about me. Before moving to Sunny Pines, I had worked for 20 years with Metropolitan Water Services. For the last decade, I had been the chief maintenance supervisor for the entire county water system, including Sunny Pines. In fact, I still consulted for them on major projects. I knew the water system for this community like the back of my hand. I had designed most of the upgrades myself, installed the smart metering system, and still had access to the maintenance protocols. And here's the kicker. Due to a quirk in how the development had been built, the main water supply for the entire neighborhood ran through a junction point at the edge of my property. It was one of those weird municipal planning things that happens when developments expand over time. The next morning, I put on my old Metropolitan Water uniform and hard hat, grabbed my professional tools, and went out to the water junction point on my property line. Several neighbors noticed me working and came over to ask what was happening. Just some routine maintenance, I explained cheerfully. Nothing to worry about. Then I installed a special electronic valve at the junction. One that gave me complete control over the water pressure to specific sections of the neighborhood. It wasn't technically part of my job anymore, but I was still licensed and certified to work on the system, and I documented it as a pressure regulation upgrade in the county system. I made sure Brenda's house was on its own special circuit. That evening I waited until 10:30 p.m., when I knew Brenda would likely be taking her nightly shower, based on the water usage patterns I'd observed over the past few weeks, perks of knowing how to read the system data. Using my phone, I remotely activated the valve and reduced the water pressure to her house by 50%. Not enough to be immediately obvious, but enough to make her shower experience significantly less pleasant. For the next week, I randomly adjusted Brenda's water pressure. Sometimes it would be fine all day, then drop to a trickle while she was doing dishes. Other times, it would be perfect during the day but reduced to a dribble during her morning routine. The beauty of it was that it wasn't consistent enough for her to prove anything was wrong when she called the water company to complain, which she did multiple times. They sent technicians out, but everything always tested normal during their visits because I made sure of it. After 2 weeks of this, I decided to escalate. The next time Brenda left for her weekly hair appointment, she went every Saturday at 10 a.m. like clockwork. I made my move. I put on my official-looking uniform again and brought out some safety cones and official-looking equipment. I placed them near the main junction and began working. Several neighbors came by to ask what was happening. "Oh, we've been getting reports of water quality issues in the area," I explained professionally. "Just conducting some routine tests and maintenance. Nothing to worry about, but if you've noticed any problems, let me know." Of course, they started listing all kinds of minor water issues they'd experienced recently, some real, some imagined. I nodded sympathetically and made notes, assuring them I'd take care of everything. By the time Brenda returned from her appointment, half the neighborhood had spoken to me about their water problems. As she pulled into her driveway, I was chatting with her next-door neighbor, Susan. Brenda's eyes narrowed when she saw me in uniform. She marched over, designer purse swinging. "What's going on here?" she demanded. "Good afternoon, ma'am," I said politely. "I'm conducting some water system maintenance. We've had several complaints about water quality in the area." "I didn't authorize any work in our neighborhood," she snapped. I smiled. "With all due respect, ma'am, county water maintenance doesn't require HOA authorization. It's a public utility matter." Her face flushed. "Well, I haven't had any problems with my water." "Really?" Susan jumped in. "That's strange because everyone else on the street has been having issues. Irregular pressure, slight discoloration. Mike here says it might be related to some unauthorized tampering with the system that happened recently." Brenda's face went pale. "Tampering?" "Yes," I said gravely. "Someone has been interfering with water connections in the area. It's actually a serious offense. Could lead to contamination of the public water supply. We're investigating it now." "I'm sure it's nothing," Brenda said quickly. "Probably just old pipes." "Maybe," I conceded. "But we have to check everything. Water safety is no joke. By the way, I may need access to your property to inspect your connection point. Standard procedure when we're investigating potential tampering." "That won't be necessary," she said firmly. "Our plumbing is fine." "It's not really optional, ma'am," I replied. "But I can come back with the county inspector and a police escort if you prefer. They take water system tampering very seriously." Brenda's face had lost all color now. "Fine. Do what you need to do. But make it quick." For the next 3 days, I made sure Brenda's water acted up constantly. Her pressure would drop to a trickle when she was in the shower, then suddenly surge when she least expected it. The hot water in her house became unpredictable, sometimes scalding, sometimes ice cold. By day 4 she was at her breaking point. I was in my front yard when she came storming over. "You," she shouted. "You're doing this somehow, aren't you?" I looked up from my gardening, the picture of innocence. "Doing what, Brenda?" "Messing with my water. Ever since you showed up in that uniform, my water has been a nightmare." "That's a serious accusation," I said calmly. "I'm a certified water systems professional doing my job. Why would I target your house specifically?" "Because you're angry about the fountain." Several neighbors had come out to watch the commotion. I stood up slowly. "Brenda, I think you need to calm down. I don't know what you're talking about with my fountain, but as I've explained to everyone, we've detected some irregularities in the water system. In fact, I was going to talk to you about that. Our surveillance cameras caught someone tampering with a water connection on this street about 2 weeks ago." Her eyes widened. "Cameras? Of course. All major junction points have security monitoring. Water system security is federal law now, has been since 9/11. Tampering with it is a felony." By now, a small crowd had gathered. Brenda looked around nervously. I don't know anything about that." "That's strange," I said, "because the footage clearly shows someone who looks a lot like you supervising a man cutting into my water line." I pulled out my phone and pretended to pull up a video. "Would you like me to play it for everyone? The county inspector is very interested in seeing it." "There's no need for that," she said quickly. "I'm sure it's all a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding? About cutting my water line while I was out of town dealing with an emergency at a nursing home? That kind of misunderstanding?" The neighbors gasped. Susan spoke up. "Brenda, did you really cut off Mike's water?" Brenda was cornered. "It wasn't like that. He had violations and he wasn't responding." "That doesn't give you the right to cut off someone's water." Jim called out. "That's crazy." "The HOA has procedures," Brenda began. "Cutting a water line isn't in any HOA manual I've ever seen," said another neighbor. "That's criminal behavior." I stepped forward. "Look, Brenda, I don't want to make this a legal issue. But tampering with the water system is serious. The county could press charges and I could file a civil suit for the damage and harassment." Her face crumpled. "What do you want?" "For starters, an apology. Then I want you to resign from the HOA board. And finally, I want written approval for my fountain installation." "You're blackmailing me," she hissed. "No, I'm offering you a chance to make things right before this escalates. Your choice." The next HOA meeting was quite eventful. Brenda resigned, citing personal reasons. The new president, Susan, approved my fountain immediately. And miraculously, Brenda's water problems disappeared overnight. Word spread quickly about what had happened. Neighbors started coming to me with stories of Brenda's past tyranny, the ridiculous fines, the selective enforcement, the personal vendettas. It turned out I wasn't the only one she had targeted over the years, just the only one who had fought back effectively. A month later, a for sale sign appeared in Brenda's front yard. I heard through the grapevine that she and her husband were moving to a condo downtown. No HOA involved. The day they were moving out, I was watering my newly installed fountain garden when Brenda walked over. She looked different, humbled somehow. "I suppose you're happy now," she said. I turned down the water pressure on my hose. "I'm just living my life, Brenda. That's all I ever wanted to do." She nodded. "I still don't understand how you did it, the water thing." I smiled. "Let's just say it pays to know your neighbors before you cut their utilities. You never know, one of them might control the whole system." As she walked away, I turned my fountain on. The water flowed perfectly, catching the sunlight in a spray of diamonds. Sometimes justice, like water, finds its own level. These days, our HOA meetings are actually pleasant. Susan runs things fairly and the ridiculous violations have stopped. I've even been asked to join the board, but I declined. I prefer to remain behind the scenes, just a friendly neighborhood plumber who happens to know how everything flows. And my fountain? It's become something of a neighborhood attraction. People stop to admire it on their evening walks. Some even ask me to help design similar features for their yards. As for Brenda, I heard she's having plumbing problems in her new condo. Such a shame. Must be the old pipes in those downtown buildings. Or maybe, just maybe, water has a long memory.